Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for joining me for this very special presentation called How to Build a Sellable Asset. Now, I would have to say this topic, I believe, and I've been doing this for 14 years now, and I do webinars. I actually do two a month. So suffice it to say, I've done a whole bunch of webinars. I've spoken to hundreds of doctors. This is by far the biggest topic I know keeping you up at night, and it's the one I'm asked about virtually almost every week from the surgeons who call me looking for guidance because the game has just changed a lot. So tonight's discussion, it's going to help you find the answers you're looking for. And by the way, in case you don't know me, because a lot of you have been forwarding this invite to others who may not be aware of me, I am Catherine Maley. I am the author of Your Aesthetic Practice. I'm also president of Cosmetic Image Marketing, where we do use creative strategies to get you more patients, more profits guaranteed. And I also have an MBA, so I know the game of business very well. And tonight, that's what we're going to talk about. So let me just lay out the agenda for you. I'm going to introduce my special guest, and I talked about him in the emails invitations, but I want to lay out exactly who our guest is, and we're going to walk through his own transformation and his journey. And frankly, it's his transformation from running an average medical practice to a multi-million-dollar practice that he's really proud of. And you're going to get lots of pearls from him if you listen carefully. We're also going to open it up to questions, and you can type them in the side here in the question box to the right of your screen. And I'll be watching things, and if he doesn't cover it or you need some clarifications, let me know and I'll get that answered for you. And then we're going to have an exclusive invitation at the end, so you definitely want to stay tuned. So here's what you're going to get. Tonight, you're going to discover how you too can go from a surviving to a thriving practice. And I know so many practices who are now in survival mode, and we want to get back to thriving. And you can do it in minimal effort with a team supporting you and with systems. So you've got processes that you actually understand, and you can even increase your revenues by 27% on average. So I want to now introduce my special guest, and this is Dr. Edwin Williams. Now, he's the CEO of the multi-specialty Williams Surgery Center in upstate New York, where he's practiced for the past 23 years. And he's a board-certified facial plastic and reconstructive surgeon. And he's also very active in his National Medical Association called the AAFPRS. And since 1998, he's been a fellowship director. And he has a fellowship through the AAFPRS, and he has had that for the past 14 years. He's also a really popular and frequent speaker at the national medical conferences. So let's start with the discussion with who was Dr. Williams. So Dr. Williams, can you describe your practice and your family situation from the beginning? Like as in, I don't know, if you want to start around 1992, what did your life look like then?
Hi, Catherine. Well, I moved to a town where I didn't know a soul, and politically I was out of line with what existed. There was a very strong, tight-knit plastic surgery community, and with provincial bylaws in a lot of the hospitals, where you had to be on staff for 2 years before you could get ER coverage. So I went out on my own. People thought I was absolutely out of my mind. But I went out on my own, and people said, well, how are you going to make a living? And I said, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to work the ERs. Now, you got to remember, we didn't have injectables then. We had facelift, blepharoplasty, rhinoplasty, skin cancer, and trauma. And anything I could do to, keep dinner coming in the door without injectables, mind you. So, and then, I started to work the emergency rooms, totally be available, just come in the beginning and the end of every shift and walk through and say, listen, do you have anyone? And the phone slowly started to ring, and I borrowed money from the hospital. I lived very conservatively, and I slowly got where about a year later I was starting to break even. I think I made net $50,000 my first year or something. But and then I had some real struggles. I mean, the because the groups that were in town were very upset about the fact that I was getting phone calls. They did everything they could do to shut me out. And for example, I'll give you an example. They would complain to the ER in the hospital, and then say, well, okay, one of our doctors is going to start doing his surgery elsewhere, and my phone stopped ringing. But you know, taking good care of people, working your rear end off, and um, it slowly started to grow. And by about the late '90s, I was doing okay, and then I built a building, and the practice continued um, to grow. The problem is we got into 2001 and 2 and 3. The economy was very strong, but I was literally working myself to exhaustion. And so that's kind of the beginning years. Um, didn't really have any idea what I was doing. I think I was doing pretty much what most of us, the way most of us run our practices. You look at your checkbook, if there's revenue in there. I didn't have the systems and policies and balance sheets and things that I do now, strategies, benchmarks, all that kind of thing. So that's kind of the early phases.
And what about the family time? Was your family seeing you at all? Or if you're doing the ER, that's brutal.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I was putting in long hours, and of course, trying to get all the paperwork done in the evenings and anything I could do. But it's taking its toll. I always made an effort to. And at the one time we only had, when I was the younger years, we only have one child. We have four now, um, but I wasn't home. Put it that way, nearly as much as I am now.
And then what kind of team did you have put together? Did you have staff?
Well, I did. Actually, what happened in the early 2000s is my revenue, and this is pretty common for most practices, is your revenue starts going up and up, and you start working harder and harder. If you look at the bench, first of all, you don't know what you're doing, but if you look at the benchmarks, what staff should cost, that number as a percentage is going up and up, and you're dealing, at least I was dealing with frustration, working harder, morale issues, all these type of things, which at the time I didn't realize was just a symptom of my dysfunctional team, and or my dysfunction. And it's easy for us to want to blame um, you know blame our staff and be frustrated, but really I didn't know what I was doing. And really it's not our fault, because as we go through our training, we are trained, first of all, especially in surgical training, you are trained to do it yourself. You're trained to figure it out. You're trained to rely on yourself. Um, and we really don't have any formal business training. We don't have the systems and policies in place, and again, like I mentioned, how do you read a balance sheet, and those type of things. And no one's going to fire you because you're the boss. So that's basically where I was at. I remember Susan Sullivan, who's our chief operating officer now, was one of our senior nurses at the time. I mean, I didn't have a big staff, but she was someone who'd been around. Said to me, we need to figure something out. I mean, you can't keep working like this. You got to hire a partner, or bring someone on, or something like that.
Okay, so being the stubborn person you are, because I can only imagine that conversation with you, um, you were not going to slow down. I mean, had something not happened, you were probably going to continue to do this until something broke, like your health or your family or something. But let's talk about what did happen. What was your wake up call?
Well, there were. It's a bit of a process. What happened was, around the 2003-4 time frame, I realized that I needed that there was a different way. And I guess there were several things occurring at the same time. I had a lot of friends who were running businesses, and they were running very successful businesses. And I watched what they did. And I started to think that, we as physicians they are no smarter than we are, but they're slowly assembling a team. They learn how to build alignment. Um, and quite honestly, what they do and do well, um, they're rewarded. And things like, you know, growing their equity, um, growing their stock, and then pulling out equity at certain periods of time, giving them a considerable amount of wealth. And so by observing a couple of very close friends of mine do this, and it made me realize that I didn't know what I was doing. So that was the first thing. I thought about um, getting an MBA. In fact, I got accepted to an MBA program, but decided not to do it because, as you can see, I was fox hunting and um, you know out with friends, and I started to think I finally am at a point in life where I can have a little time to myself. So I decided not to do it. But that's kind of where I was at. I realized that I didn't know what I didn't know, but at least I was coachable. I figured out that I had to really get some help, and I was starting to do that. I mean, I was reading books. I've read dozens and dozens of books now, but I was starting to read books, and then really the big epiphany happened in 2006. I was out fox hunting one morning, and I was on um, a hunt horse, or a horse that had not hunted with our hounds, and the horse um, had we were going out, and the horse reared. In other words, went up on its back two legs and flipped over and came down on me, and I ended up with a crushed tibial plateau, um, external fixation, fasciotomies. In fact, the first day or so, they didn't think I was going to keep my leg,
Aye.
and that was a real wake up call. That I mean, I thought I was. I had conversations with the bank from my hospital bed, by the way. I was concerned that I was going to be insolvent. How do I had this huge revenue stream, had this huge overhead. How was I going to continue to do it? With me, they basically told me I needed to be, out at least 6 to 8 weeks. I said that was not an option. I finally, after my second surgery, had a wheelchair fabricated and went back to the operating room at 3 or 4 weeks. But it was not easy. But that was a huge wake up call that really was the nail in the coffin to tell me I got to get to work and figure out that this whole place can't depend on just me, and that I really didn't know what I was doing.
Okay. So in that case, what was the decision that you made? So now a lot has happened, or a big thing happened, and now you're incapacitated. So what decision did you have to make changes?
Well, I think the first thing that, not just myself, but physicians or any small business person for that matter, is to become coachable, to be open minded to the fact that they really don't know what they're doing, how to build a team, how to hire. How often do we think we hire this great patient care coordinator? We hire this resume. We don't have a system in place to do this. And 6 months later, we've got somebody that's a solid B or B minus player. So what I started to do really was to read everything. I did a lot of reading. I'm a big fan of Jim Collins and Jack Welch. I've read all of Jim Collins' his three books. I got mentors. I put together a mentor team. I started to read, like Wall Street had this thing called the Wall Street MBA. I read this thing called the 10-day MBA, and I realized what was the syllabus. There's finance, there's accounting, there's organizational structure, and then I started to read things about each one of these. Accounting, and you know what happens? I mean, most of us are pretty bright, or we wouldn't have gotten where we are. But you start to see things repeat themselves, and you start to all of a sudden gain clarity. And That's basically what what happened. Besides having a couple of really good mentors and coaches who have been there, who've walked in the shoes and run bigger businesses,
Were
and
the
but again, the
coaches, I'm sorry,
concepts
were
and
the
principles
coaches
are the
other
same.
surgeons or were they business people?
No, no, they were, believe it or not, they were business folks. But one of my lines that I use with the folks that I help is, business is business is business. The concepts are all the same, and I realized I was not applying any of these early on. Um,
Like for example, what would be a one business um,
well,
strategy or thought or
yeah.
perspective?
Well, no, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a couple examples. Um, having I mean, how do you do it? How do you do strategic planning? I mean, I dare to say, first of all, I had no idea. I mean, you hear people talk about it, but um, uh, and I have to tell you, most small businesses don't do strategic planning. So, this is something that corporate America does all the time. How do you run an effective strategic planning session? And so I started getting templates and trying things out and reading more and speaking to folks who've been there. And I eventually put together, and I had my share of failures. And then I started to put together a system and a pattern and a rhythm, how often we do it. I'll give you an example. With an effective strategic planning session, you come out, what are your goals? You have everyone aligned behind it. What's our timeline? Who's responsible? When we're getting together next, and all of a sudden stuff just starts happening. Okay, that's one. um, how to hire. I have such a tight system for hiring. It's like a dating process, and by time people come on, you've met our staff.
I sure
By
have.
time people come on board, they're one of us. So these are just a couple little examples, but it made me realize what I didn't know. And in the beginning it is a process, but what I finally got it down to now is a very, very tight set of systems, policies, and even more important, a culture and a vision, um, and an amazing team and staff. And so one of the things that you've heard me say this before, if you don't have the right people in the right place, you don't have a business, and all you have is a job. And by the way, if you don't have a business, you have nothing to sell. And so many of us in small business, physicians included, think that we're delusional. We have this grand delusion that someday someone's going to buy it. And until you can create something that someone wants, that becomes more valuable each year, just like corporate America with stock, um, you don't have a sellable asset. So, these are just a couple very small examples, and that was, basically a 5-year search, that I went through. It's like turning a cruise ship. You get a lot of, if you put your mind to it, and it is a process. In a few years, you'll start to really turn it around. And the thing that was exciting for me, this group that we just dealt with this last year, have the exact number, the increase in revenue they had in 1 year, following what we put together. So that's basically it.
Okay, but I don't want to jump over this because you spent years searching for the knowledge you needed to make some changes. Reading and actually doing are two very different things. So let's talk about the setbacks because this is not easy to change a culture of a practice. How did you stick with it, or what did you do to get everybody on the bus and getting them all
Mhm.
in the same direction? How many
Well,
challenges are involved in that?
there are certainly many. Let me explain it to you this way. First of all, if you look at a CEO who runs a company of 1,000 employees, and they make them 10 to 15% more productive, okay, they get people aligned, make them okay, and they're compensated for that. Are they worth it? Absolutely. My point is this: it's a lot harder, quite honestly, than the surgery, um, because the execution piece and the intestinal fortitude to make the tough decisions is what they, or we, if we do this correctly, get paid for. Now, what gives you the drive? At least it did for me. is having the clarity based on so many things that I've read, having the clarity to know what I was doing was right and was accurate. And, you know, it gives you the permission to do it because what you're doing is correct. Yes, you get some pushback and there are setbacks. And I'll give you an example. When you first start, I didn't necessarily change my culture, but I started to enforce my culture. And you're going to have people quit. You're going to have people say, I don't understand. Why are we doing evaluation and coaching? We've never had to do this before. People kind of get set in their ways, and it is a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. Um, but if you can commit to making a change, you can eventually develop an unbelievable, what I call a high performance team. Um, and the rewards are great whether you have a huge staff or whether you have a very small staff.
Okay. So you've got the clarity, and then how does that equal the transformation? What is it you're doing so differently now
Well,
that has transformed everything?
basically, basically, if you think about this for a minute, say you go to build a house or a building, okay, and you have 40 construction people show up there, and you say, well, I kind of know where I want the house and what I want it to look like. You get 40 people kind of expressing their ideas and how they want to do things. If you have a very detailed blueprint, right down to the type of trim, I'm going to have a so many layer, type of style, Greek revival. You're going to get the detail right down to where the outlets are going to be. I guess that's my analogy. And if you don't know where you're going, what you're doing, and a plan, you'll just continue to flounder. And the big difference between us in a practice, in an aesthetic practice versus another small business per se, or actually if you're running a company for example, to Vision for GE, if you're not making your numbers, you're fired. Okay. Most of us we will rise to our level of dysfunction and hit our glass ceiling. Now, some people that may be a profit of, 1, 2, 3, 400, whatever it is, 1,000, and in some it can be many, many more. But you'll get people will hit their glass ceiling, and they will continue to function at that level of dysfunction. So, without a plan, you're never going to get there. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And for me, the clarity that I gained by putting all these things in place is what allows us every year to continue to hit our numbers, hit our goals, and grow.
That's a really good point. It's not like your staff's going to tell you that you're not doing things correctly or you're not a good leader, or there's nobody there for holding you accountable. You can hold the staff accountable, but that's so true. When you run your own business, you're the boss, you run the show. It's your thinking or no thinking. That's a good point. So
Well,
the
and when the economy was great, Catherine, a lot of people could get by being okay.
That's a good point.
And all the is one of the consultants said to me. I mean, we had Allergan come in and say, "What are you guys doing? We're in the top 1 to 2% in the country for Botox volume and our retention." And they said, "What are you doing?" But when they eventually left, they said, "The big thing is because you have such a well-oiled machine. Um, People who don't or have all the cracks exposed when the economy turns south." And I think you know, that's the difference between running a business and team alignment and just going from day to day and having morale issues, and we got morale issues in the back, we got this one's fighting with that one and that kind of thing.
Oh boy, does that hit home. I do a lot of consulting on site assessments, and you can tell when the staff is working together as a team, when the doctor's leading the group. You can just feel the culture because often the doctors will spend a fortune training their staff, but I can tell in 20 minutes, I can train them all day, but we don't have the right people here. We don't have the right attitudes. It's not the right people. So talk about putting lipstick on a pig. I think that happens a lot.
Hmm.
In that industry.
Well, and Let me just tell you a little story. One of the questions I get is they say, you know, Ed, I have no desire to have 40 employees like you do. I run a small show. I don't ever want to be more than four to five or six. Why would I? Why do I want to go down this road to work on the business and do it? My argument is you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to for several reasons. Jim Collins, who's one of the people I've followed a lot of his work, he's a full professor at Stanford, an MBA professor, and he was asked once this very question, because what he did is he looked at best practices in businesses, and those who beat the S&P for 15 years straight, those companies who made it through tumultuous times. What are the common denominators? And what he said is he basically said the same thing I'm going to say, and this is what I talk about with clarity. And we went through this in 2008 through 2010. We can talk about that in a minute, but the bottom line is this: you can't afford not to, because if it's done correctly, I don't care if you have 4 staff or 5 staff or 25 or 45. If it's done correctly, you actually have a more pleasant place to work. You're more profitable. I mean, that's a statistical fact. You are more profitable than your comparison company, business, and you have a nice place to work and a lot of fun. But not everybody, everybody does it. 2008, you've seen my numbers, and I share this in detail with masters. But 2008 through 2009, we would we were one of these companies that beat the numbers in tumultuous times. As we know, I don't need to dwell on what happened in 2008 through 2010, but we continued as business. Collectively, our businesses grew double digits. My rhinoplasty practice and my aging face practice, the surgical part, had dropped 20-25% each year. But our numbers, business numbers, continue to grow double digits. But that's the kind of thing that was tested, and it's so consistent with Jim Collins' book.
And how much of that had to do with leading a team? Because
Well, it's all of it.
yeah, because I don't want to go by this lightly. You do have a big team, and congratulations, because I know last year, Rebecca had told me about this right at the end of last year. You won Best Places to Work in your area. So, congratulations.
Well, thank you. No, this is something we were proud of, and I didn't even know. This was a total surprise to me. This comes out posted in the Business Review each year, and I don't know how it happens. Somebody in your staff must nominate you, and then they come in and they do polls, but the bottom line is this is the end result when you get this. And typically, most medical practices are not run like this at all. The CEO, which is the guy or woman running, you have 3 jobs basically. And the hard part of us with the surgical or aesthetic practices, we also need to be the technician from time to time, right? Because we're the revenue generators. But here it is. Okay, you are responsible for creating the culture. That's easier said than done. You are responsible for creating the vision, and people need to know how you make money. It's a taboo word in medicine, but it's what we all rally around. You've seen our office, you've seen the charts, but the end result is the morale. It's almost, honest to goodness, people say it almost feels like a cult, but it really does. Look at Tony Hsieh's work, some of the stuff he's done with Zappos before he sold to Amazon. Working for Zappos is almost like a cult, and it's the same thing now with Facebook. So anyway, it's using the same business principles that corporate America does to run a practice, and it's fascinating how it will continue to grow.
I was so surprised when I went to your office how palpable that is. You can feel, it doesn't feel like a cult. It feels like everybody's happy to be there. Everybody I encountered had the same attitude. I love that. It was all, may we help you? It was smiles, direct eye contact, good, just really good vibe going through your office, no matter how many of them I met. And I thought, kudos to you, because that's not easy. It's not impossible, but I'll tell you, it becomes a lot easier if you hire the right people. That's what the real story
Well,
is.
you've heard my talk on how to build a high performance team, but
Uh-huh.
I'll give you some statistical facts that are fascinating. If you have a business where your employee relationships are a 10 out of 10, in other words, when they're asked question, they've given questionnaire and they answer it such as this: I have my best friends at work. I couldn't imagine working anywhere other than the Williams Center. Okay, they're a 10 out of 10. So that's one metric. The other one is when you have a relationship, a customer slash patient staff relationship or employee that's a 10 out of 10. In other words, I couldn't imagine um, how I would take care of myself without the Williams Center, something like that, right? Do you know? And you can substitute it into Ritz Carlton because we've studied their model as well. But when you have those two metrics at 10 out of 10 in the business world, those companies outperform their competitors 5-1 in profitability. And
Wow.
that's all we've really done is put that stuff in place. So this is not something that came from me that I made up. It's just incorporating good business strategies, tactics into a medical practice. And you know what? It works.
So you know what's interesting? You have studied it. You've got your success principles. You put them in place. You've executed. You've been tested. First you were tested with the riding accident where you were out. What it was, it 6 weeks, and your practice still went along just fine because you had the
Well, I was
systems in
still,
place.
I had, that was really a wake up call. I mean, I wish I could say that I wasn't worried at that time.
Okay.
I
All
mean,
right.
how many of us, if we're honest with ourselves, how many of us can say we could walk away from our practice for 5 or 6 weeks? I mean, I can now, but I at the time it was scary.
Yes. So you weren't totally set up yet, but you were on your way. But then the recession hit, and instead of you folding, which by the way, I was getting calls left and right saying, if this recession is going to kill me. If this doesn't let up in another 6 months, I'm out. I got a lot of those calls, and instead you went double digit growth. So obviously your systems are working. But here comes your next test. This is Ed's beautiful home in upstate New York. Absolutely gorgeous, 6,000 square feet. It's beautiful. But now you want to brace yourself. This was his home burning to the ground. And this just happened last year. Now, here's the point. For most surgeons who are working in their practice and not on their practice, this kind of a thing is devastating. But for you, Dr. Williams, it was different. So can you so here's your next wake up call. How did you handle that? And I'm so sorry for this. This is just horrific.
Well, um, it it was a distraction, but I'll tell you, I mean, it was pretty traumatic. I mean, you go to work one day. My wife was out of town with two of our kids. I was here with two of the others. And leave one day and you get a call. I was coming out of the gym at 4:46 and the call went in at 4:41, and by the time I get home there was nothing left, dogs and all. So, and I got to tell you, it's still, it's still, it's a weird experience to go through, and it was not fun. But I got to tell you, I have an amazing set of friends and family that totally rallied. And I basically called my office and I said, I'll be there for the surgery. I'll be there for the consults, but you guys are on your own. And I got to tell you, I mean, last year we hit all of our numbers, every business, surgery center, rejuva center, practice, building, all hit our numbers. So it basically, yeah, it was a pretty severe distraction, but um, you know, I was able to do the right thing and be home with my family and basically check out psychologically for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Wow, that is amazing. So Now let's look at what your life looks like now. You've had your ups and downs, but you've got your success principles in place and your leadership strategies are working and you've modeled you've followed other role models that you have in the business world as well as in your books. So let's just start with your family and let's just see where we're at now. So here's life now. Here's the Williams family. Can you introduce them? They are adorable.
Um, well, slides are a couple of these pictures are a couple of years old, but there's obviously me to the right. St. John's, one of our favorite places. So my in one picture, my wife is to the left, and the other one in black tie, she's next to me. And my oldest daughter, Kate, is in medical school, and she's finishing her first year. Riley, who's 15, Lydia, who's now 13, my son Evan, who's 10. So yeah, that's my gang.
Very cute. Now, here's your physician team. Can you introduce them?
It's Dr. Polynice, who is now a partner, Dr. Pontius, who is a board certified facial plastic surgeon. She was actually one of my fellows, probably the brighter of all three of us. But she joined us a few years ago, and she does all of our non-surgical, and is amazing. I no longer do any of the non-surgical because that is her thing, and her career is really developing. She's becoming more active in teaching, and we're actually hiring another facial plastic surgeon and another plastic surgeon within the next year. We've already agreed on things, and we're moving forward. So we have a pretty amazing team.
Very nice. Okay, now here's an aerial view of the Williams Surgery Center, and it is in Latham, New York, right outside of Albany. And here's the outside of this center. You want to just describe it? It's 22,000 square feet. I know that. I still get lost in it every time I go.
It's a freestanding building, and in there we have the surgical practice. We have the our Rejuva Center, which is our medical spa. Although we don't do facials and that type of thing. It's all laser, non-injectable. And then we have our two-room freestanding Medicare AAAHC certified ambulatory surgery center. And just an amazing team. Many of these folks have been with us for many years. But I got to tell you, I have less grief now than I did 17, 18 years ago with 4 staff because I had no idea what I was doing. And it's a heck of a lot more fun to do
But
it
I,
the
but
right
I,
way. There's one thing I want to say that I keep forgetting to say.
what's
Here's
that?
the other reason why it's so important to do this and do it correctly. Because if it's not done correctly, not only do you not have the same degree of success, profitability, and fun in corporate alignment, but you have nothing. Most of us are delusional. No one person's going to come and write a big check for you to walk away from your business. The only way to do this is to learn how to set it up correctly so the stock and the value of it goes up and everyone wins. This is the thing. You have to create a culture of winning and accountability so everyone's winning, not just you, not just your associates, but your staff. And that took some time for me to understand and figure out. I couldn't understand why people just didn't do their damn job. You laugh at that every time, right? Because we
Yeah.
all we all were there. We've been there.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
but
have to say, because I know right now some of our audience is saying, "Are you kidding me? I don't want to run this big operation." Well, 22,000 square feet. How many staff do you have, by the way? I don't know where we're at this point. How many?
now I don't know. Somewhere in the 40s,
Yeah. But I just want to stress
45.
the same principles apply if you have 40 staff or 4 staff. I guarantee that because I've done it myself in my own business with a much smaller staff than that. The principles are always the same. So,
No doubt.
where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? Oh, here's your team here. You just have a lovely office there. Just it's really a pleasure to visit you. I can say that. No matter where you go in that office, you're going to see people cooperating, working together, talking with each other. It's calm. It's just a very, very nice place. Look at
Well,
all these people.
the last 3 or 4 years now, everything we do, we measure, we celebrate. It's all about the team. I mean, I think I told you we had a huge fundraiser tonight at the building. I did nothing for it. I showed up there. The place was humming, and then we hit numbers and we celebrate. Um, we celebrate together, and I think that's what builds the rah rah, the camaraderie. And this is something I was definitely missing years ago. I didn't understand how important it was for you know to get everyone on board so that everyone's winning, and that is absolutely critical. Everyone has to feel and truly be winning.
Oh, good for you. So where are we going with all this? So let me just tell you our story of how Dr. Ed Williams and I got together. I have been on the speaking podium for the national meetings for years, and I often followed Dr. Williams in the business and the marketing track, and he was just brilliant. One year we were in Vegas for Randy Waldman's meeting, the multi-specialty meeting, and he was running the MBA program. It's a 4-day MBA program, and I was one of the speakers for that, and it was just packed solid with incredible business information as well as marketing. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe everyone's not in this room. Those are still in the days when people, like most of the doctors, still weren't on board with that. And I thought, wow, I see a very big need here, and especially watching what was happening, the recession, the competition coming in, the demand changing, the aesthetic patient's needs just completely changing. The technology was changing. I just kept thinking to myself, you know what? It's not about the surgery anymore. It's about the business side of the surgery. It's about the marketing of your practice. It's how are you going to do this differently now that things have changed? So at one of the meetings, I finally stopped Dr. Williams and I said, "You really know your business side of this aesthetic surgical industry. Would you be interested or open to talking about teaching other doctors, more or less?" And he looked at me like, what? And I said, you know what? Don't decide now. Let me come see you. I've got an idea of let me just tell you what my vision is. Because I do have to say, a lot of times what doctors say and what's really true, sometimes there's a mismatch there. So I literally went out there on my own dime. I wanted to see that there really were 22,000 square feet, that there really were staff on board with a great culture, happy patients. And here I am out on the lawn, and it was so true. He was exactly who I thought he was. He was exactly the same on the podium. All of his teachings on the podium were exactly what he preached and he taught, and it was so uniform. Then we went to dinner, and I said, okay, let me just tell you my vision. I really need you to help other surgeons learn what you know here, because this is the future. If you don't understand how to run this practice in today's world, you're not going to be here in tomorrow's world. It's going to be so, you'll be enveloped with all of this competition and all of um, the pain that goes into that. That's what I see. Because I go to offices so much, the frustration, the struggle that they're going through because they don't have the right people on the bus, they're not in the right seats, the processes aren't set up, the metrics aren't there. Nobody knows, not nobody knows, but everyone has a faint idea what's going on, but nobody has really the bigger picture. So I said to him, would you be open to, coaching others? And what did you think when I showed up there that day?
Well, as you know, the first thing I said is, I don't, by the way, I don't work Fridays. So, I'm not getting together with you Friday morning.
Yeah.
I'm home doing paperwork and doing what I want to do and working from my den or playing or something. But then I said, well, tell me more. I said, look, Catherine, I'm not interested in going into practices. And I mean, besides, it's just not worth my time. But then she said, "Would you? What if we got a bunch of people together? You obviously love, you love this stuff. I can hear the passion in your voice." I said, "No, I do. I love this stuff. I love to teach." I said, "If we could do it and do it collectively and get a group of people together who got it, who was coachable, um, I'll work with you." It's been a real fun project. I mean, you can tell these guys what our successes, but so we put together this master class of surgeons, and it's we've had a lot of fun with it.
All right, so here's the opportunity for you to join us so you too can get the inside knowledge of what it does take to build a sellable asset. So I'm going to introduce to you now what we've been talking about, and that's the Masters Academy of Surgeons. And then the people say, so what is this? Well, here it is. It's a group of forward thinking surgeons who come together to transform their practices so they make more money with less stress, with a strategic plan for now as well as the future, while having more fun. Wouldn't that be great? So then I thought, okay, let me think this through more, because what's the purpose of masters? What is it you're going to get out of this? So I spelled it out. You can create an environment in which your practice is run by your team so you can focus on what you do best. You can build an organized and a systemized practice with clear processes so you deliver high quality service to raving fans who return and refer. And that's where I spend some of my time during Masters talking about that. You create an unstoppable marketing machine to attract new patients. By the way, can I just say what happened the last time, Ed? Remember at the last meeting, I did a marketing contest, and you got some really great prizes. Whoever had the best patient attraction strategy won the game, and it was not, I wasn't dictating it. It was democracy. So we all decided who had the best idea. Do
That
you?
was incredible, by the way. I got to tell you. I mean, I learned, and actually one of the things I've already taken back and put in place in my practice. So it's I learned a ton.
Oh my God, I learned a ton, and this is what I do all day. But you know what was really interesting? I added up all of the everybody gave an idea, and they also told us what it meant to them in terms of revenue. When I added it up, it was almost $350,000 in revenues. So these were not just pie in the sky ideas. These were serious ideas that people had executed in their practice and got solid results from. That was just amazing. But here's the big one, while consistently growing your personal wealth, because this isn't all about just, what can I do about my practice? It's what do I do with the profits from my practice? What do I do to build my future? There's a lot more to it than just how do I run a practice? So here's the promise. By the time you complete the master's program, you're going to have clarity. Boy, is that a big one. That's what everyone kept saying to me. I got so much clarity. But you're also going to get the foundation, and you're going to have your practice designed and blueprinted by the time you leave so you can grow faster, you can be more profitable, and you can do it all in a straightforward, fun way. And as a matter of fact, I guarantee that. So just to give you a taste of the past masters, we have two groups under our belt, and we're just getting better and better at this. So here are some photos of the masters members, and this is them learning and sharing perspectives and growing. And they commented so often on the camaraderie, which they found to be absolutely priceless. Now, I actually, and then we had a lot of fun doing it too. We worked really hard, but we also went out to dinners. Once we went to like a wine country. That what the people had said to me was it was this off time. And isn't that always the way it is when you're at a medical conference? Where do you learn most of everything? In the hallway, right? Well, the same thing here. We would have little lunches or networking where you could go off on your own and talk. As a matter of fact, at our last dinner, one of the members said to me when we were walking out of the restaurant, he said the surgeon next to him just gave him $100,000 idea during dessert. That kind of stuff happened a lot. These little nuances that there's a saying,
You
little.
know what I noticed,
Yeah,
Catherine?
go
I
ahead.
think the thing that was most impressive to me is that people came into this retreat a little reserved And by the end of the second session, it was unbelievable. Even after I went through all my material, the sharing,
Yep.
and at the end of it, people saying, "Okay, how are we going to keep this going? How are we
Yep.
going to keep this going?"
They
Which
had
next year we have.
literally, yeah, they said they had made friends for a lifetime, for a career. They love talking to each other offline. The relationships that were developed were amazing. That will actually last for a lifetime. But here's the big one. I actually pulled the masters group, the first one, and I followed them revenue speaking. Do you know they averaged 27% increase in their revenues because of this tactics as well as the strategies and the principles they learned. But this group, they actually executed what they learned. I think that was the secret. Now, here's what some of them said, because I want to take it straight from them, not from me. This is what Dr. Flaherty said from Florida. Like most busy surgeons, I grinded through each day, putting out fires and moving forward in haphazard fashion. Ed's disciplined approach, practice management, and development has opened my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about every aspect of our practice. By spending time working on the practice, in less than 1 year, we have improved our hiring and our firing practices, our staff morale, my leadership skills, our systems of operation, and our results, higher revenue and lower overhead. I mean, wow, that about says it. Now, here's what Dr. Kotler said. He's a great guy, and he's been through it all. He's out in Beverly Hills. He's in a super competitive area. He's been on all the TV shows, so he just knows it all. And he was our special guest because we really wanted his perspective because he was around, 40 years ago, and he was just trying to say where things are going. So this is what he said. Only those who will have the foresight to spot the trends, respond quickly, and be proactive will see their practice thrive. Those who don't take action, who stand idly by, hoping for some divine guidance, will see a shriveling practice, less disposable income, and severe limitation on the ability to support their families and have a decent lifestyle. In these tough economic times, we all need great teachers, mentors, and coaches. And then he said forever, by the way. And isn't that the truth? He wrote that the day he came to visit, he watched us as we worked, and he wrote more notes than probably anybody. He's really into learning and always bettering his best. And here's another one. This was Dr. Paco Canales. He's out of California. He said, I've been a plastic surgeon for more than 20 years, and I thought I knew most everything. Masters has given me many new perspectives and insights that have up-leveled my thinking, my attitudes, and my processes. Knowing what I know now, I would have paid twice as much to get in. Huh? Not bad, huh? So we're only going to, no, I shouldn't say that. Let me just tell you exactly what you're going to get if you were to join us for 2014 Masters Academy. When we first started this, we had 3 retreats and a hefty price tag. What we heard loud and clear was you weren't ready yet to have that much time off. You have to go into this in steps. So we downplayed everything. We lowered the cost, but we also lowered the amount of time we spent together, and we made it more strategic time together. So we've got 2 3-day retreats. I'm sorry, they're 2 2-day retreats. Well, I guess they're 3. We meet on a Friday night for a meet and greet, so you all get to know each other, and that's really helpful. It really breaks the ice. And then we meet all day Saturday and we talk about the success principles, and I talk about patient attraction and marketing and what's working in today's world. And then we have dinner together Saturday night, and then we meet again all half a day Sunday, because a lot of you like to get back and be ready for Monday, and there's just a lot of networking going on. So here's what else you get. You get a tour of Williams Surgery Center at the September meeting. Um, I'm sorry, that's going to be at the June meeting. I'm sorry. It's at the June meeting, and it's really important that you see it. You have to see it to believe it, because he's really walking his talk. You also get a master's binder with deliverables, because right now we're talking about the what, because there's no time to get into the details. But with the deliverables, you get the how, and you get step by step with forms, and anything we talk about, we tell you exactly how to do it. You get cutting edge patient attraction strategies working now. You get monthly webinars between meetings to keep you on track. And those were super helpful, because then we were more gelled when we did get together, because we had a lot more of the same education under our belts. You also get little known resources to catapult patient volume while cutting overhead. This was really good. Some of this has to do with how you set up, you know, anti-embezzlement things, how you set up checks and balances to make sure everyone's doing what they say they're doing. That was amazing, the cutting the overhead. You get free critiques of your marketing and your website. I've helped an awful lot of doctors get a whole lot more visitors who stay and convert on their websites because I know a lot about that. And then you get a private one-on-one SOS call with Dr. Williams. Sometimes there are some instances where you may not want to share with the whole group, but you need help. You know you're in a bind or you're in a hole and you can't get your way out. And this call can really come in handy. Now, who is this for? These are high quality meetings and these are for surgeons only. That means we're not inviting non-core specialties or nurses or spa owners or business people running spas. We're not even inviting wives. It is really a closed door session because it's surgeons helping surgeons up level. So this is for surgeons who want and believe that they should get more out of their practice than they're currently getting. And it's also for those ready to take their practice to the next level, given the right tools, the right strategies, and the right resources. And that's how you win. So here are the other qualifications. We can only work with one surgeon per area. There can be no competitors in the room because then you won't be comfortable in sharing. You've got to have revenues of at least $500,000 a year, and you have to have at least 4 staff. You also must agree to attend both retreats because there are only 2 of them, and it is invaluable to spend time with this group because we're mind sharing. It's amazing the energy that happens in there. And you've got to be coachable and you've got to be willing to share. And let me ask this, Ed, let me just say what does coachable mean to you?
Well, as you know, in the first session, when I start to help people go through this kind of discovery process, one of them is that if you are not coachable, in other words, you can't get your ego out of the way, you're doomed to failure. This stuff will never sink in. But for those who are open-minded and are willing to get their ego, check their ego at the door, they will get a tremendous amount out of this. And I don't want to get into the metrics behind it, but level 5 leadership, those who, again, in Jim Collins' book, have beat the S&P for 15 years straight, all have that in common. And that is why it's so critical that we get our ego out of the way.
Okay, so that's going to lead me to my quote because you have to be coachable and willing to share. And I love this quote, and I'm sure you've heard it before. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Isn't that the truth? What I have noticed going around the country for 14 years is you're so stuck in your own head because what is a surgeon supposed to do? When you have a problem, who do you get to turn to? You could try to talk to your wife, but she won't know what you're talking about unless, of course, she works in the practice, but most don't. You can't talk to the staff because you have to be the leader and you have to show that you know everything. But when you have uncertainty and you're not sure which way to go, you can't talk to your competitors. You need somebody to bounce ideas off of and to get out of your practice and really stop and think in a much different way. I think that's what Masters creates, an environment for you to think differently, shift some of your perspectives that make huge differences. So, we're only going to work with 20 surgeons and we keep this small because we offer the one-on-one guidance to address your specific concerns. But here's what happens. This is not for someone looking for a magic bullet. And it's also not someone who wants to do the get rich quick. I go to a ton of conferences and that's all they do all day is blast you with, hey, get 100 more patients every day. The SEO stuff. Oh my God, you're going to get thousands of new patients from the internet. How's that going for you? I just know it's none of that stuff. If you think you're going to walk in, plop down some money, and your practice is going to generate thousands of new patients and $1 million new dollars, it's not. it takes you. So it's none of that. We're looking for serious minded surgeons who really want to take their practice to a next level. And you really are looking for a future that's a lot rosier than the one you might have envisioning right now due to all the things happening out in the world. So I can't go much further than that, or I don't want to. I'll waste too much time because this is geography protected. I want to find out. You don't even need to know anymore right now, other than is your area available and do you qualify? So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. If this sounds at all interesting to you, I'm going to have to talk to you a bit more to see if you're a good fit. Because at this point, this will be our third go around, and now I do know who fits well and who would benefit from this because I do guarantee it. So I need to make sure
Well,
you succeed.
and quite honestly, Catherine, too, if someone is not coachable, you and I both know, we're not interested in working with them because they're wasting their time and their,
Totally.
resources.
Absolutely, and plus we only take that many, so we don't want to. I mean, really, this is about having the right attitude and the right open mindedness, and if you've got the right qualification. So if you're interested, just go ahead and text me. I've got my cell phone. That number is 415-377-8700. Just text me your name and your zip code. Or if for some reason you don't own a smartphone, which would be uh, shocking, or you just for whatever reason don't want to text me, you can always go to our website. It's called mastersacademyofsurgeons.com, and that'll tell you a
I'm going
bit
to sign
more.
off. All right, Catherine?
Sure. No, 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 because I have to answer questions. You have to answer questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a
Okay.
whole bunch of questions over here. So,
Okay. Very good.
so, so that's what we're going to do. But I just want to leave you with this. You must either modify your dreams or magnify your skills. I love that quote. Isn't that the truth? So, what are you going to do? Are you going to play a smaller game or are you going to think bigger and play a bigger game? The choice really is all yours. So with that, I do want to answer some questions because they've been coming in this whole time, Ed, since you've been talking.
Fair
So
enough.
if
Sounds
you
good.
do
I
have
thought
some
people would be
questions,
tired of hearing me.
what's that?
I said I thought people would be tired of hearing,
No,
hearing,
no, no, no,
hearing.
no. We've got
So go
plenty of
ahead.
questions over here. So if you've got a question, feel free to type it over here on the right side of your screen. And then while we're doing that, I'll just go ahead and put that back up so you can text me and or go to that website. So let me just jump right into these questions. And one of them is, all right, directly speaking, could you have accomplished the same relief of overworking exhaustions without hiring MD partners or NPs or PAs? Changing culture is important and optimizing staff is indeed necessary, but they offset your own workload only by a fraction, even when near perfect. Please comment on relative importance of hiring other professionals as partners or practitioners.
Um, so comment. Gosh, that's a long question.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry.
Can you? Am I correct in saying comment on how important it is to have other um,
Well, you know what? He's still
providers?
what he's saying is you're still the revenue producer no matter what you're doing, you're still bringing in all the big bucks. And I would like you know what? That feeds right into that quote that you say at Masters, which is brilliant about revenue. How much of it you're responsible for.
Well, what I say is that if you think of an immature practice where it's just you, first of all, even if you have four people, you apply these principles, you're going to have a better quality of life, better staff, make more money, and and have more clarity. Now, if you decide, and this is so when I start to talk about wealth building and growing your asset and building a culture of winning and accountability where everyone wins, it can't just be you winning. But here's what tell everyone in Masters. My goal is and was always to get to a point where 20 to 25% of my revenue that gets posted on my tax return comes from my hands, and the rest of it's coming from the business. And so I think I told you, the last time at the end of 2012, I haven't figured out 13 yet, but it was something like 27% was coming from my hands. Our goal, if you can get to a point where you're down to 20 or 25%, that's extraordinary because you no longer have anything to worry about. You know, I mean, if I fell off the horse tomorrow, my house burned down tomorrow, I'm not worried about I can't do surgery anymore.
I mean,
Those kind of
God, that's a
it.
huge mind shift. That is so huge
Well, yeah, but
because,
it's because we. This is the whole ego thing. We get so wrapped up in am I busy? Am I busy? Am I busy? How many patients I saw? What I generate today? That is the wrong mindset.
well,
Because if you do, I'll give you an example. About 3 or 4 years ago, we had the best March I have ever seen. And you know what? I was out of the office 2 of those weeks. So it's a whole different mindset. It's running a business, not just how do I fill my surgical schedule, which is unfortunately what most of us think about.
right. Okay. So, I'm getting some questions about when should I start planning for my exit? Is it too late or is it too early? When is it too late? When is it too early, I guess?
Well, um, I don't think it's ever too early because, like I said, no one's going to walk up and just hand you a big check for everything. What you have to do is I'm going to back into the answer. What you have to do is create a business just like corporate America does, where you have stock and the stock continues to become more and more valuable, and someone is interested in buying it because as they continue to buy small pieces, whether it's associates or what have you, um, they're winning, and things may not work out first time around. So my short answer is I would say 5 to 10 years at least. My one of the things that always happens to me at the national meetings after I give my talks, I have people that come up to me in their late 60s and they're like, I can I come visit you? I really need to figure out how to sell my practice. At this point, you've got nothing worth value. You know? So I think it's never too early. And actually, if you set things, you have to start setting things up correctly with good accounting, good legal, and what have you, to create an asset. So, the process, and it doesn't happen overnight, the process takes time, but it should be started early. 5 to 10 years, five on a minimum, I think.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and that's so true. We've had people in there who were quite a few years different, and I noticed the younger guys were loving it as much as the guys who maybe had, who were actually seeing the future closer to them.
Well, it's
So,
kind of like planning to retire, Catherine. I mean, I had always had in my mind, I wanted to retire at 55, and I planned that way. I turned 55 this weekend. I could walk away from it. I don't need to work, but I love what I do. It's a nice position to be in.
I wish I could say that. Yeah, I'm not there yet. So they're asking about like potential buyers. Where do you find potential buyers? And that's exactly why you need to join Masters because you don't find, you know, they're asking how do you identify a potential buyer for your practice?
Well, it's first of all, the only person that can own part of a medical practice is another MD, and so, or a hospital.
Uh-huh.
um, uh, could own a practice or non-for-profit. A surgery center can be owned does not have to be owned by a physician or a hospital, by the way. So I mean, this is a whole breakout session, as you know, how to develop multiple profit centers and make them sellable. So it's just too long to answer, unfortunately, on a.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, some of these are actually, oh, these are tough questions that are going to take too long. Um, You know what? And I didn't realize how late it was. I said we were going to go for 1 hour. I am very sorry about that. Let's just do this. If this sounds interesting to you, please do text me on my cell phone at 415-377-8700. Just give me your name and your zip code, and I'll find out if your area is available and if you qualify. Or you can always go to mastersacademyofsurgeons.com. And I do look forward to your comments. You can always email me at Catherine@CatherineMaley.com. It's my name, Catherine@CatherineMaley.com. Or just go ahead and text me. we really we're going to get started pretty soon. We're getting started in June. So if you want to come on board and start thinking differently, planning, actually planning a future that looks a lot rosier than what it's looking like right now, given all the trends, we'd love to have you. So, Dr. Williams, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope this was of
Thanks,
value to
Catherine.
everybody. And then we'll talk to you again, or I'll certainly be in touch. But that's it for the evening. Thank you so much. Take care.